Hey y'all, it's Laura and welcome back to the Scrapbook video. This time we are using the February stash kit that I created to do a fairly simple picture-in-picture layout. Now I haven't done one of this particular style recently, and I've had a few people asking if I would purposefully do a few videos that incorporated more of my go-to designs, and I absolutely will do that. They are called go-to designs for a reason, and that reason is because I use them all the time. But I do tend to lean in pretty heavily on a few of them more than others. And it also depends on where I am in my scrapping journey. So for example, I used to do a ton of grid layouts, and I used to do a ton of horizontal layouts. And lately I have found myself doing more column layouts and more of the vertical layouts. And so this one is picture-in-picture, which is simply making a smaller layout inside of a larger layout. And I really enjoyed this one specifically because it brings the focus in on your photos in a big way, a very dramatic way. And by having all of this white space around the outside of my layout, I have the opportunity to go pretty busy in the middle, and it doesn't overtake the layout or feel too much because there is so much white space. There's places on the layout for your eye to rest. And in this case, this layout takes on a really fun shape that I really enjoyed. So I didn't plan much about this. I'm literally pulling in scraps. These are pre-cut pieces of paper that were just left this particular size in my kit, and I decided let's see if we can use them up. And so that is my plan, try to use up these pieces of scraps on this layout. That's all I walked in with. I do this quite often, and I find that this challenges my scrappy muscles quite a bit, but I enjoy it. I enjoy this creative challenge to hand myself a few bits and pieces and say, make this work. So this is what I'm thinking so far. I do like to go off of the edges of that picture-in-picture just a little bit, just to give it a more layered effect, give it a little bit more depth and dimension, and give the impression of there being way more to the layout, a little bit more 3D-ness to the layout than there actually is. So using those scraps, I'm thinking to go ahead and stack them up underneath of my journaling spot here at the bottom, and that is going to give, again, that layered look without adding a ton of bulk to the layout. Now, my little pieces were not quite long enough to give a really nice base to this journaling spot, so I'm going to cheat just a little and cut them in half and then give a small separation in the back, and that way the lovely little layers of pieces will sit nicely behind my journaling spot. Now, one of the things that I want you to keep in mind with this layout is that there is not a lot going on in these photos, and so it's okay if I go a little crazy with the embellishing. Now, I did try not to use all of my florals on this one, but the temptation was real to use all of the florals on this one. Instead, I decided to try a different technique, something that I used to do quite a bit more often with stitching, but did not do a stitching this time because I just didn't have time to stitch. But it is an interesting technique, and so when we get there, I think you guys will be impressed. It was very fun to do. On the top here, I have taken my two 3x4 photos. I have matted them onto some beautiful pink paper, and then I found this little cut-apart piece in the kit that had a very similar color scheme, and I was like, oh, perfect, that's perfect. But how am I going to get three pieces to attach to each other without having to overlap them? Because I didn't want to cover up any of this cut-apart piece, there really is no edge to it that I could cover up. And so what I did was grab a piece of paper to function as kind of a backdrop, and I'm going to tape all three pieces to that piece of paper, and that creates a connection between the three of them in the backdrop. That way, if you absolutely cannot overlap your pieces, you still can keep them together as one piece, and make sure you're setting them down on the background in the place that you want them. And then just tape them down. Now you may notice I use a lot of double-sided tape, and the reason for that is because I live in Mississippi, and here in Mississippi we have a very moist environment most of the year. And I find that the tape doesn't do as quite as badly with this, but occasionally a tape runner. And if you only use, let's say, a small piece of tape, it may not stay long term. And so I tend to use a lot of tape. And if I'm not sure even then, I may go for glue even, because I find that works better long term to keep my projects together so that I don't have to go back and fix them. Because when I used to use tape runner, every single time, and I've used several brands of tape runner, but I've never liked any of them. And for our environment, they just don't stay. They don't stay sticky. They dry out really quickly. Because in addition to having a very, very humid environment, we also have a very hot environment here. It can get up into hundreds fairly regularly in the summer, and it just dries out the adhesive. So now I'm going to dive into the embellishing. These beautiful, beautiful florals here are from Pink Fresh Studio, which is in the kit that I've added. There's quite a bit of Pink Fresh Studio in this kit. And I really loved these kind of coral colors, and I wanted to kind of reflect those from that center piece. However, I was having trouble finding a piece that I really liked in the middle. And initially, this is what I was thinking, a nice big floral cluster in the center, and that would be the main idea. But then I found this beautiful little swag floral, and I went, but this fits perfectly. It ties in all of the colors of the layout, and even though it's much more narrow than I was thinking, it really fits in nicely. So I grabbed a couple of leaves to extend it just a little bit, and I will fussy cut off a little bit of that white border, but not a whole lot, because in a big cluster like that, you really need the white border to give it some substance. I also found a few little butterflies, so I decided to incorporate those as well, and I'll fuss around with which butterflies to use, but any of them really would have worked. I was just being fussy. I also fussy cut out that lovely little cut apart piece that had this brilliant saying that I definitely wanted to use. And it talks about putting in the effort to make something happen for yourself, to make your life better. And I definitely feel like that is what's happening in these photos. So these photos, I should tell you, are from the university that I attend. And there is this beautiful fountain in the middle of a little gladed area that is right in the center of a bunch of buildings. But it doesn't look like it, does it? It looks like it's in the middle of almost a forest or a wooded area at least, but it's not. It's really in the middle of a bunch of big buildings, and then there's these small little glade, a little circle glade of trees around this gorgeous fountain. But of course, with the tiny fountain in the background there, it looks really small, right? And so I had to go take a picture with it closer of me in it so you could see for scale how massive this thing actually is. It is quite large. I would guess that it's somewhere around 8 feet tall, give or take, and maybe 10, not sure. It's very big. It's very big. But I love it. I find it so calming when I'm walking around campus in between classes to walk through this little glade and to be able to just kind of explore a little bit. I really enjoy the campus where I'm attending, and it's been cathartic for me to find some peace on the beautiful grounds. And that's kind of what I'm going to be journaling about, is just how that was an unexpected bonus of attending this campus, is that there is so many just beautiful little places, little pockets like this around campus that I have just really enjoyed walking through, sitting for a while, and in between classes, just taking a moment to breathe. And I really appreciate that. I really do. Now, here's where we get a little busy. Now, I decided to pull in some frames because there are quite a bit of frames in this particular kit, and I just haven't had an opportunity to use them. And I'm really bummed about that, but my scrapping time, I did not plan for the fact that February is in fact the shortest month of the year. I almost said the shortest scrapping month of the year, but no, it's the shortest month period of the year. And I had given myself way too many pretty things to play with in this kit and not enough time to play with them. I also had not budgeted in the fact that time-wise, midterms land at the end of this month, and so I just have not had a ton of time to scrap, and I was hoping to get extra layouts done with this kit. That just didn't happen. So I will have a flip through for you probably this evening. We'll try to get it in this evening when I get home from school, but I do have one more layout to go up it just won't get up probably until tomorrow. I'm a little late in voiceovering this month. Did lots of scrapping, but did not do very good at voiceovering on time. So you will see one more layout using this kit probably after the flip through tonight, because I want to stay on target with my flip throughs being at the end of the month. And I do have the new kit going up tomorrow as well. So probably tomorrow afternoon I'll pop up the last layout so that you can see it, because it is scrapped. It's just requiring editing and voiceovering, and I don't have a lot of time right now, which is frustrating. But it is what it is. So I'm playing around with these little happy heart pieces that came from the frames, and after a while I decided that I was trying too hard to make it work up there at the top, and I'm going to move it back down to the bottom and let it hang as well down at the bottom. So the idea here is I used to do some like stitching lines that would create these kind of dangling pieces underneath of floral clusters, and I really love that look. I love the sort of whimsical vibe that it gives that kind of style on a layout, but I didn't feel like stitching. I did not have time for it, did not have the energy for it, and so we're going to bring in Nuvo drops to do it instead. So I started out with this one, I realized you couldn't see it. It had nice little glitter pieces in it, and I thought, oh yeah, glitter would be nice, that'll look really pretty, but it was not showing up on that dark background. So I switched to my tried and true bright gold, which I do really enjoy. So I'm going to go ahead and dot out some little lines as if these beautiful little frames and pieces were hanging from underneath that floral cluster, and I love this. I think it is such a fun effect, and it is so quick and easy to do, but it adds so much detailing to the layout. These lines do not have to be perfectly straight, so don't worry about that. They can be a little wonky, and that's completely fine. So I'm just going to keep dotting some Nuvo around the page, adding little shiny bits of detail, and then I'll bring in my gold ink splatter and splatter with that as well. Now for this particular layout, I did decide to add some enamel dots at the very end, so you will see that pop up at the end. I hadn't intended to do that when I was initially making this. But then I got to the end and felt like that little gold washi up at the top needed just a little bit more oomph, and so I decided to give it just a little more oomph with some enamel dots. That's about it for this one, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to put together. It didn't take terribly long. I think this one only took me about 45 minutes to put together, which is good because quick and easy layouts are exactly what I need right now. And I love that I was able to bring in lots of scraps on this one. Used up a ton of the paper that was left in this kit, as well as some of the frames, because I wanted to make a big dent in those. That's about it for this one, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it, and until next time, bye y'all!